Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of LifeSpace. LifeSpace is organized by the AINB. We are the organization for the interior architects of Belgium. We started the LifeSpace series a bit more than a year ago, and we've been interviewing interior architects mostly, but also specialists around the construction business and materials. Today we have a very interesting interview for you. But first of all, let me introduce the sponsor from this LifeSpace. It's Vola. I guess most of you know Vola for their amazing taps and very iconic. They're really very beautiful minimal design, Danish design. The brand started off when Arne Jacobsen was asked to design first taps for the brand after winning a competition for the National Bank of Denmark. So let's move on. Today we are interviewing Vincent van den Borre. Vincent is leading Enameling Belge, which we will find out about very, very soon. So let me go on and invite him in.
Hello.
Hello, Vincent.
Hello, everybody.
How are you?
Fine, thank you. Thank you very much.
Vincent, thank you for participating to our LifeSpace. You have quite some story to tell. We are very curious to go with you through who is Enameling Belge, a very old company. So it would be nice of you to give us an introduction so that we start understanding where you come from.
Perfect. So what I'll do is I'll speak a bit about the company itself, explain a bit the history throughout the years and what happened, and then jump in when I arrived and talk about a bit the wind of change during the time that I've been there already and how we see the future for the company now. So Enameling Belge actually was born in 1921, so we have something big to celebrate this year, but it was born only administratively. Administratively in 1921. It started its first productions in 1923, so we start counting from 1923. That's the first date objects started coming out of the company, let's say. So soon you will hear a bit more about that in 2 years, let's say. So 1923, it all started actually in industrial enameling, so what we call white enameling, and the word says itself. So white enameling, it was only white products for household uses, so lavatories, sinks, bathtubs, etc., etc. But soon the demand started changing in the industry. After 2 years, a lot of demand started coming from the publicity area. And as you can see, for example, the picture now is that some examples of our proper collection, our own collection, let's say, in which we have 650 old panels. The ones you see are actually all the original ones. So it's the ones produced since 1923 until now, and they're still all intact. So it started in 1923 productions. Then it soon evolved into publicity signalization. The company grew really, really fast. In the 40s, the 50s, there was already 135 people working there. And we were situated in the center of Brussels, in Sint-Jans-Molenbeek, so in Molenbeek itself, on about 6,500 square meters surface, which actually was constructed bit by bit. So the company started buying the houses next to it while it was growing. We broke down some walls and then started a new production. But the problem was that the more it grew, the more it became like a labyrinth. So it became quite complex to produce. There was no lean process anymore, etc. What happened is at that time, in the 50s, the 60s, there were about 9 enameling companies in Brussels and around. In all of Belgium, there were about a good 20, even 25, let's say, companies. As of today, we are the only one actively producing in Benelux. So a lot changed since then. I'm going to go a bit more in detail about that. What happened is the roads in Belgium were a bit like, let's say, Route 66 in America. The buildings were covered with publicity panels everywhere. And the government in Belgium said, okay, now that there's a lot of publicity all around, let's start taxing that. And it's from that on that you also see on the panels, the old sign in the right bottom corner or left corner, TPB, Taxe Payée Bruxelles, which was actually signed as well in Tour and Taxis, where the taxes were paid. And from that time on, the whole story about enamel crash actually started. What happened is many specialized companies in publicity signalization started getting much less demand. People didn't want to pay that tax and started looking for alternative products, such as lacquered PVC or even coated aluminium, etc. And for signalization, it started as well with neon signalization and other materials as well. So these were a bit the competitors at that time. The company had to restructure pretty fast, and in the 80s there were only 50 people left, so from 138 to 50 in not even 30 years time, so that's quite fast. But then the owner at that time made a very good decision. He said, okay, we have to reinvent a bit the product. We have to look for other ways. So he started looking for a new industry, and he came on what we call collection or comic books, as you can see here. The most famous ones are the ones of Tintin, so Kuifje, but we're not allowed to show them because they are very hardly protected by Moulin Sarrager, and we don't want to get in trouble with that. Even though the author rights and everything are paid, they're still quite annoying with that. So yeah. But everything actually started in that market. So we had publicity, signalization, and then the collection market, comic books. Started with Tintin. The first productions were done in 1982 until 1986, in which the only original panels from Tintin were produced. We are actually the only producer who ever made original comic book works. If you find any other ones signed by other producers, they are not official ones, and that's actually quite important to know until today, actually. So this, the company started continuing and regrew a little bit, but not much, until the previous owner from who I took over the company, that was Benoît Dutrive-Lidoal, who took over the company in the beginning 90s. At that time, there was about 55 people working there, and then it changed pretty fast. He did a good job until after the 5 last years, because he got sick. There was no more active management, there was no more active sales, and as you can hear, I don't have to explain much. The boat started sinking, so that's what happened. In only 10 years time, it went from 55 to 5 people. So that was pretty harsh. A big company who actually got almost bankrupt, or was bankrupt and was dying. I heard about that through Tanguy van Quickenborne, who also was one of the speakers in February, if I'm not mistaken. And what actually, so Tanguy van Quickenborne, to sketch it very quickly, comes from the marble industry, Van de Wege in Zulte. So he took over the company at first hand, together with me. We visited it in June 2016. Knowing that the previous owner already planned to close the books and stop the activity 2 months later in September 2016. So we had to go really, really fast. How did we get in contact with the company? It's actually where the whole architectural and design story starts. Muller van Severen, 2 very well-known designers in Belgium, went to visit the company 2 to 3 years before we arrived. So in 2014, actually, they visited the first time, and they spoke with the previous owner. They asked, okay, we want to make designs. We have some really good ideas in poppy colors, and we want to present it at Salone del Mobile Milan. The previous owner was not interested anymore. He already had in his head planned to stop the activity. So he said, no, I'm not interested. Just leave me alone, leave me in peace, and just go away. So I was very surprised, but that's literally what Hannes and Fien explained us at that time. I was pretty surprised that they were treated a bit in that way, and that it had to happen that way. But we see it as an opportunity.
Not the right moment for him, maybe.
No, it was not the right moment, but we saw it as an opportunity. So,
of course.
So that's actually how it went. Of course, they started talking about it on events with other people, and that's how it came to Tanguy and then also to me. We visited the company, and from that time, the story started for me, let's say. What happened is I'm still young, but I was even younger then. I was only 25 years old at that time. I visited the company, and to be honest, I don't remember a word of what they were saying during the visit, because I was dreaming away, I was flying away with everything I saw. It was so unique, the whole artisanal production, the colors, and then the panels, the people working there a long time. So it was like a museum in a way, let's say. And it struck me that hard that I started thinking, okay, what is enamel? What are the possibilities? And in which markets can we start introducing it? Because, okay, the markets that existed, the classical markets still exist, of course, today, we're actually downsizing year by year. So, okay, what can we do with it? And with that feeling, I went home and I said, okay, that's a good feeling. I have to do something with it, because that's a good start and you have good ideas. And that's how it started. We had 2 weeks time to decide after the visit, no time to look into the books, anything, 2 weeks to decide. So, okay, I said, let's jump on it. Let's do this, and we'll see how far we jump or how far we get. I started in August in the company, and the first days they started giving me just 2 USB sticks. That was all they had. One USB stick was with the database of the clients, an Excel file just with clients in it. That's it. And the other database was with the purchase and the sales invoices, and that's it. For the rest, there was nothing else, knowing that there was a lot of knowledge, but not even digitalized or not even written down.
But for us, that all of us that don't know anything about Enamel, tells us, gives us an explanation of what it is.
Enamel itself,
in the image also with these colors.
So Enamel itself, as you can see, for example, the picture now on the screen is actually what makes us unique worldwide. So we are the only ones today who have that amount of colors. I'm going to go a bit more in detail later on that. We have a very large amount of colors and finishing possibilities, thanks to the knowledge we have in the company. So that's actually what we took over, a lot of knowledge, and that's it. Which is that the company since 1923 develops its own enamels internally, knowing that other producers, they always buy PU bags or prefabricated enamels, which are just powder formed enamel already made. They add water to it, and they mix it and they start applying it, spraying. It's like a paint pasta, but much thicker than paint or a vernish. What we do is we buy the base materials, as you can see here as well. So we start from the different clays who make the structure, the thickness, and the finishing for a part. Enamel frits, which are glass crystals, actually, burned glass crystals, and pigments to create the color. Those three primer additives, let's say, are added in one formula. One formula is a H4 page long, so each color has its own formula. One A4 page long, different enamel frits, so glass particles, different pigments, and different clays, which need to be measured exactly on the gram to have the right color, the right texture, but also the perfect fusion while firing it in the furnace. How enamel is made, so we put that whole formula in a mill, as you can see on the left on the picture, between the poles. Those mills are filled with ceramic balls. They mix it, and in the meanwhile break the entire particles into powder. We add between 40 to 60% of water. Also, it needs to be exact, depending on the formula. And then we mill it again. It's about a total milling of 2 to 8 hours, depending on the amount we need. And it makes a lot of noise, so we do this by night, mainly. When that is ready, we do just one little test to see, okay, if the finishing is good in a small test furnace, and then we start enameling the requested products by our clients. How it works is that everybody knows enameling from enameling steel. So there are different types of enameling. Maybe start with that first. What we do is vitreous enamel. That's actually the only enamel that can carry the name only by itself, enamel, because you also have enamel ceramics, which is ceramics, and you have enamel pottery or porcelain. So that's these are three different ones. They are family from each other. They are prepared and made in the same way, but the production process is quite different. For example, we fire between 800 to 850 degrees, between 5 to 10 minutes, depending on the size, the thickness of the steel, etc. Knowing that ceramics is fired between 1000 1200 degrees, so even more than us, and that for a minimum of 12 hours. Sorry, so they have a very high energy cost, and that also gives them one slight problem, that they can't control the finishing at all. So they, during that time, it's too long, they can't control the whole production. Their resistances are a bit lower than what we deliver, even though we cook it in a lower temperature, but we have more like a temperature shock, and we have a fusion with the steel. It's very important that we start off from the right steel. It's not just a normal cold rolled or hot rolled steel. It's a cold rolled steel with a special treatment while unrolling the coil and cutting it, which has an extra treatment for enameling. So it's only the enameling companies who have it. There's no extra cost on that at all, but okay, it's important it's the right steel for that fusion, because during the cooking in the furnace, the whole process happens. It's like a chemical reaction. You have a liquid pasta, which we apply, spraying, applying by hand, brushing, etc. So all the possibilities there are. Once it's applied, wet, of course, we dry it and then we fire it. And what happens is that actually while firing, the steel doesn't melt, but it comes in a weak state. And then the enamel has the time to fuse together. So it becomes actually one base material or one material altogether. It goes even that far that by sandblasting, you can't take off the enamel entirely. You're going to damage the steel, and you're just going to blow a hole in it. So yeah, and that brings us even a bit further. I'm going to speak a bit more on the classical market, and then I'm going to go in detail on technical parts and projects we did. What you see here in front of you on the picture is, for example, all the drawings, the designs that we apply for the classical market, so publicity, signalization, and collection panels, so comic books, we apply it by silk screen printing, which is also a quite old technique, and we do it by hand. Why is that? We did different tests on that. By hand, you have more creativity, more flexibility as well, and you can still manipulate your plate a bit more than with a machine. And we work a lot faster, which is very surprising. We did tests with half automatic and full automatic printing machines, and a half automatic printing machine can only print 200 plates per day. We do by hand per person 400 plates a day. Per color, of course, so they're not finished, color per color that we apply. So it goes 2 times faster, and that is because the pasta is so thick, we have to press it through the silk screen and then clean off the silk screen every time. That with a machine, it's impossible to do that. So that's a bit how we realize all those publicity, beer signs, etc., as everybody knows. But of course, what happened is, okay, we took over the company, and to get to the architectural part, of course, is that my idea was, what is enameling, what are the possibilities, and in which markets can we introduce it? And that brings us to the resistances. Enamel is, people think, okay, enamel is glass, that's true, but it's fused with steel, so it's reinforced. It becomes much, much, much stronger than that. And it brings us to high resistances. People never thought about that, but our idea, or my idea, was then, okay, with these resistances, corrosion proof, heat proof, etc., why not use it in architecture? And with our creativity, why not use it in design and art? For the resistances itself, maybe a bit go more in detail. As I said, it's steel, but even though it's fused and it's wrapped entirely with enamel, it's 100% water and corrosion proof, but it needs to be done right. After that, we also have the heat temperature. It goes easily from -65 to +500 degrees. So entire cooking plates, or even pizza ovens are being enameled today, because it's one of the only products that is so resistant, that has so many color possibilities. It's non-flammable, very important as well. It's the only product in the world that is unlimited UV resistant and weather resistant. It's never going to change its color or anything else. And then we come to chemical and acid resistance. Funny to say, but it's actually really true what I'm saying. Vater, Procter & Gamble, and other companies, as we all know today because of the COVID story, they came to us even before COVID, but they ordered a lot of samples with us to do or to create the COVID vaccines on, because they had to do a lot of chemical testing, heat testing, etc. And that was done on samples that we made for them. Of course, just white, but okay. It goes even much further than that. The tabletops or the countertops for surgery houses are even often made in enamel because it's a very, very clean product. So that's also one of the other specifications. It's also highly combustible. So we don't see it here, maybe on the other picture that we had before. But it's highly combustible and it's shock resistant. It goes to 20 Newton. What is 20 Newton? To give an idea, because today we work on a lot of contracts for facades and cladding, as well as signalization for tunnels and metro stations. Leopold II in Brussels, for example, 25,000 square meters of enameled facades, Namen Support, so Porte Namur also, contracts that we work on, are all asked to be done in enamel. Why? Because it's very easy to clean. It's just like a car wash brush that they drive next to it and it cleans everything off. And it goes much further than that in case of graffiti. So vandalism, it doesn't bite in. So graffiti, just with a sponge and water, we wipe it easily off.
And that also means that it's very light comparing to other materials.
Yes. Yeah. If we, for example, if we compare it to familiar products like ceramics, we need to apply it on natural stone or clays. They are very, very heavy. You need a minimal thickness, etc., etc. It's much heavier. They have much less possibilities in colors, and they don't control well enough their production, so they can't produce 2 times identical the same color or something else. Mm-hmm. We give a guarantee on all our resistances that we just saw before. We give a minimal guarantee of 40 years. We know nobody in the whole market with whatever product they have to give that guarantee except for diamond, but nobody's going to make a kitchen in diamond. So that's a whole different story. So it goes really fast, really far.
That also means that you're going to have, in terms of transportation, you're going to be able to pack a lot more material in one per transport, let's say, again much lighter, so it has an influence on the sustainability impact, which is quite interesting. I guess
that's true. And we also go further than that because we had to move. So when I took over the company 5 years ago, it was bankrupt. I had to revive it. It took me a few months to get it back on track. Once it was, I don't know if we have enough time to go a bit more in detail on that or not, Mauro?
We can try. There's a lot of things to say.
So I'm going to keep it short. But what actually happened is, we took over the company and we had to revive it because there was only 5 people working there at that time. They only had work 2 days a week, and the rest were economically unemployed. So it was very, very shameful. When I arrived, the first thing I did is on the classical market, publicity signalization. I started reworking that, and in 5 months' time, we managed to give everybody full-time work again. So that was a good start. 1 year after I took over the company, we managed to already almost double the revenue. And then I said, okay, it's getting slightly back on track. Now let's start with why I took it over. The resistances, the possibilities, and the new markets, architecture, design, art. I started working on that, and then it went really fast. So the company started growing, more people coming in. And then we had a second fallback, was that we had to move. The company's buildings were sold before we took it over, so before I actually heard about the company in my life. So we had to move, and we had a year and a half for that. So in 2018, January 2018, was the move, and I'm never ever in my life gonna forget that anymore. What happened is we planned to move to Turentaxis, but a few little mistakes were made there in their contracts from Turentaxis' side actually, and at a sudden time, 1 month before the move, we already did all the investments, we did all the engineering, the plans were made for the move, so everything was ready. We just had to move, that's it. They invited us 3 December, 1 month before the move, and they said, we have a little problem. Instead of coming to sign, we have to give you another proposition because we made a mistake in the contract. In the contract, it stood that they could household authentic or artisanal productions. We knew that they can't have industrial productions, this we know, but we don't make, we're not part of that, we are artisanal. But the mistake was that they can only household stock and commercial markets. So that's something pretty different. So only shops and stock, and that's it. And they even risked to propose us that, okay, you know what, a solution, let's forget that. We never spoke about that. Nobody heard this. We keep our eyes closed, you move, you install everything, and start producing. And then I said, okay, are you serious? Knowing that the people from the urban permit and the environmental permit are situated on their site. The first day a truck would arrive to unload, they would ask, okay, show me the papers, the certificates, is everything in order? And we won't be able to show it. So I said, okay, you're not serious, we have to set a point after this, and it's done. So yeah, it went really fast, but it was pretty hard because we invested an enormous amount of money in all that work, in the move, in the production, because the production was more than 50 years old. The old furnace we had on the old production side in Molenbeek actually dated still from 1930. It was still the same oven as the first days, which was heated up that time, of course, by charcoal, so by coal. And they in the 50s they changed it to gas, but it was still a really old furnace with very low isolation, etc., etc. So it was not good. We had to invest, and of course find new possibilities and innovate for the possibilities of the future. So yeah. So what we did is we redesigned a whole furnace. We questioned the whole production, because my dream still is, and we're getting there, but my dream still is to build an entire house in enamel. So that's actually how we started thinking, okay, what do we need for that? The furnace needs to be a lot bigger, needs to consume a lot less, and needs to work a lot more flexible in a batch system. Instead of having a continuous furnace, we now work in batch system, and it consumes, to give a small idea of one of the engineerings we did, because we did a lot for other parts as well in the production, but the furnace is the main one. The furnace needed 12 hours to get to its temperature of 800 degrees, so it had to run day and night. Only the weekends we set it up. So it needed a lot of time. It was quite small in dimension. It only had the possibility of firing pieces of 1 meter to 1.50 meters, so just one tabletop, and that was it, in a continuous way. So a lot of energy loss as well through the doors, etc. What we did is we re-engineered the furnace with 2 rows instead of having one, so already double capacity. The maximum sizes we can do today are 2.50 meters on 1.50 meter on 80, so we can pass through massive kitchen blocks in one entire piece. And we can in one entire piece, and it only needs 1 hour to heat up or to get to its temperature. So we made the whole calculation, and it arrived around 24 times cheaper with the new furnace we have today. So it's a big difference. And that brings us to the architectural part. So it gives us a lot more possibilities. We re-engineered everything, and with the knowledge we have, we could do that. So we actually even patented the furnace we did. It's a unique piece worldwide, so our competitors can't copy what we did of work, of course. So that we moved, we threw everything in a weekend of time, because we didn't have much time. So we visited many buildings and found new ones. And in a whole month, we had to reschedule or replan everything. We did the redrawing from the new production site. We had to get new gas lines, electricity lines. So a whole new building had to be created. We managed to do that in 4 months' time, do 1 month of test running, and then we started producing, which now brings us to the architectural part. In the beginning, just before COVID, we balanced between a mix of the classical market being 75%, and the architectural and design market being about 25%. Thanks to COVID, I'm happy about that. I tried to manipulate and to stop that a bit longer, but okay, thanks to COVID, we were forced to give architecture and design the overhand. knowing that even though it boomed that fast, so today the architecture and design represents 55% of our production and 45% is publicity signalization. It's not that publicity signalization shrunk. It actually grew last year 9% compared to the year before, but it's because the architecture and design grew enormously fast. So now what do we do in architecture and design? As you can see already, a few pictures, or have seen 2 pictures, is it's a very robust, very strong material. So I said, okay, architecture, what are we going to do? We're going to make countertops. We're going to make kitchens, kitchen islands, kitchen blocks, splash walls, door cladding, etc. And that brought us actually in that market. Then we have design tables, etc., and so on. But I'm going to speak per market and go a bit more in detail. For architecture, what you see here, for example, is a project we did in Den Haag, close to the Belgian coast. Everything that is ivory and pink has been made in enamel, knowing that the structure itself, so the countertops are in marble stone, in wood, and other materials. Everything is carried by the enamel, so it shows also how strong it is. The steel we use is 3mm thick steel, so it's quite slim, and we didn't bend it at all, only for the door fronts to cover them nicely, and to hide the charnières and the structure inside. But here the tablets, the niche, everything, even the details like the splash wall and the, I don't know how to say in English, la hotte, so the dump cup in Dutch, are made in also made in enamel. Here you see a perfect detail of how the enamel is constructed. So the pink is the enamel part. Between that, there is then a very thin layer of steel plate on which they glue the wood, because the wood was probably not 100% straight. And then they had the tablet of wood fixed on the steel. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, on the next picture, we're going to see, voila. We see the door fronts. That's another finishing that we can do as well. It's quite broad, the possibilities we have. But here we flange panels, so like fully flanged, the 4 corners, 1.5mm steel, which we enamel and ends up at 2mm thickness, but flanged. So with the flange, you can create massive thicknesses as much as you want. We can even create acoustic panel, because glass or steel can make a lot of noise. We make for facades, cladding, or even here, acoustic panels as well. So it goes really, really far. A funny thing that we developed not so long ago is that one of the high resistances we have is heat resistant. And I said, okay, why do people still need cooking plates? Why not just make a whole enamel tablet, and we silk screen print where you put your pots and pans? And we created a teppanyaki system, of which we actually don't have pictures yet, because the engineering is there, and we already did the first prototypes, but we're waiting for a first project because it's entirely new, this. And what we do is, with resistances, etc., we heat up the area of cooking, and we can cook directly on the enamel top. So it's easy to clean, it's heat resistant, and that all brought us back to, okay, let's take out a lot of electrical parts or other parts and build it in the tablet itself. The finishing you see here is crackled, so I haven't been in detail on that yet, but we have a lot of color possibilities. Our closest competitor in the world has about 650 color possibilities. These are mainly RAL and Pantones. We today have more than 1,800 color possibilities. That is because, as I said in the beginning, we create our own enamels, we create our own colors. Le Creuset, the pots and pans, they come to us once in a while to create new colors, because they don't have that knowledge, even though it's a multinational company. Falcon, Aha, La Cornue, La Canche, and so on. If they want to create new colors that don't exist, they need to come to us to do that, because they don't have that knowledge. So it goes pretty far. We are quite unique in that. And that brings us to an important thing, that already 4 years in a row, we have been, no, 3 years in a row, we have been nominated most innovative and qualitative enamel company in Europe. And since this year, we are nominated worldwide. So we're actually proud to say that. We are small. We are one of the smaller players compared to bigger ones who only do facades, for example, or who only do street signs, etc. We are in different niche markets, high end, and you can see us a bit like the Delvaux, but in the enamel industry, but with a lot of possibilities, a lot of colors, and a lot of finishes. As you can see here, Müller van Severen, one of their kitchen islands, who are really good at mingling and working together with colors in their designs, and there are even 4 colors that when we speak about design and art, there are 4 colors that are only used by them. So we even give exclusivity to clients. Every week we create up to 3 to 4 extra colors, so we have more than enough knowledge, more than enough color possibilities. So if clients find a color that doesn't exist yet, but okay, it's not easy to find because we can always find them from somewhere. But if we have to create a color, we give it their name and it's their color only to use by them. So that's.
Do you create colors? I mean, the creation of colors comes with a project, or do you in parallel try to introduce in the existing color palette new ones because of either trends or trends that are upcoming or that you feel that will be?
It's a good question. I don't dare to say that almost, but it actually goes quite far that we become, in a way, when it comes to colors, that we become a trendsetter. So we created tables in very deep. We're going to see them later on. They're at the end of the presentation. Tables with a very deep cobalt blue. It's not cobalt blue, but it's like a very deep water blue. And that time, when we showed it the first time, people said, "Oh my God, what is that?" Well, actually, this year it's the hottest color there is for kitchens. I think I'm not lying about that at all. I think more than 40% of the kitchens that are made, or details in kitchens that are made, have that blue. So it goes really far. But that's only one of the examples. The pink you see here, that's a pink we recreated. It's actually an old dusty pink from the 30s. That was used that time for pots and pans, and it didn't exist anymore. Why? Because in the old times they were still it was still allowed to use cobalt and to use lead and no, do you say lood, plum? Do you say that? Plum, yeah, and nickel in the pigments. Since 20 years, it's not allowed anymore. So we had to change a lot of our formulas, which was not that easy, but okay, we managed it. And this is one of the colors that we recreated in 2019. So we had to recreate it with the new pigments, new clays, etc. And in 2019, it was a very hot color. So yeah, here we come more to the design part. Everybody probably knows the bistro Parisien, so the Paris bistro tables. What we do is, okay, we make the old-fashioned bistro tables as well, of course, but we like to give it a new touch because we are like our competitors see us like a little hurricane in the market. What happened is that the whole enameling market was set. So they divided the market between the bigger players. Emmanuel Belge was one of them when it comes to quality and possibilities. And everybody knew that, okay, we have to go to Emmanuel Belge if we want something new. So that's how it went in the past. But for me, that was not enough. When I arrived to the company, I said, okay, we have a lot of knowledge that hasn't been explored at all. We have a lot of possibilities that people don't know of. We need to bring that out, and we need to give it to creative people such as architects, designers, interior architects, etc., and start working with them. So see us a bit as a playground which you can use to create whatever you like. And that brings us then to how we implement bars together with those bistro tables, but in a new touch. They still look similar, of course, but it's more in the modern daily uses than the old school uses as we know them in Paris.
The tabletop that you see here is also in enamel?
Yes, yeah. The whole bar and so the bar itself and the tables are enameled in this story. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Even the structure, the substructure as well. So yeah, so it goes quite far. What do we do? Well, when I spoke about the blue, this is actually the table we exposed. It's the Marbella Collection from Pincher, which is based in Kortrijk. Stijn Bond is the designer or the person behind Pincher. He he's very good at everything that's innovation, assembly, and creation, and finding hot colors, etc. And that brings him actually to a place that he now today only realizes and produces unique pieces. So he doesn't work in series at all. Every table he brings out is unique. Here you see, for example, a detail from that same blue. It's a side table, but very refined edge finishing. So it's very thin, for which we are unique worldwide. It's so that steel is cut with a guillotine or laser cut, and by cutting the steel, you perforate actually the whole structure from that steel, and it makes it very hard to enamel it. So the surface is easier to enamel, but the edge itself is very difficult. We found a way 2 years ago to treat that during the degreasing, the cleaning of the steel, and then just before enameling doing a second treatment so that the enamel fuses on that edge as well, and that brings us to more possibilities, of course, and more resistances. The famous Müller van Severen tables, that everybody knows. These are two of the four colors which are uniquely for them. It's not the same blue as the other blue. It's a slightly different one. The green that you see, it's a very deep bluish green in a way. Then they also have Chimay green, so the Bier Chimay, that is quite famous in Belgium as well. We created that color in the 60s, for Chimay. But when it comes to design, it's a unique color that only Müller van Severen is allowed to use, because they were first to use it and they wanted the exclusivity. So we said, we do this for you. So that's a bit how it goes. This is another edge finishing. We call it the beluga, like the dolphin or the whale. Beluga, why? Because it's rounded up and it has an extra treatment. So this is 3mm steel, but we can very hard refine it. So it looks a lot slimmer, a lot more detailed. And as steel can be very sharp on the edges, because it's cut perfectly 90 degrees. We said, when you use it for tabletops or other uses, children, etc., it can be dangerous. So we found a way how to make it safer in the daily use depending on the project itself. And we first showed it as a cube. So it's more a statement we did. It has been presented the first time at Architect at Work. And we showed it as a cube to show different possibilities, but also to give a detail of, the corner and the edge finishing of that innovation. Now that we're speaking about innovations, it's also nice to say, the reason why I took over the company is it had a lot of knowledge and still has a lot of knowledge, and I don't want to be limited in my life. My vision, my idea is that if you find a way, everything is possible. Of course it is. But we never had a project that we couldn't realize, but all depends on time. So that's how it goes. And what we do is we work very hard on innovation, not only in our colors, in our finishes. So I spoke about 1,800 colors, and those colors we can do in 6 different finishings. We can do it glossy, because that's the most famous color when it comes to enamel, glossy. But we can also make it matte, crackled, transparent, gradient, HP, that's like a splash effect. And we also created now a terrazzo effect, because it's very hot and famous in the stone industry, natural stone industry, but stone is not very chemical or acid resistant. It's not heat resistant. It leaves burn marks. It's not so scratch resistant as enamel, etc., etc. So we found a way how to create a terrazzo effect. Of course, not the same as the terrazzo in stone, but with more color possibilities. So that.
I see that we have a question from Joke, which she's asking you, Joke is an architect, interior architect. She's asking if you make samples for projects. So when you are preparing any given project, if you working with the designer, you first set up some prototyping or samples, depending. How does it
works is, of course, for example, for a kitchen, we can't make a prototype, because then you already have a kitchen, so that's a bit difficult. But how it works is that preferably, if it comes to colors, preferably start off with RAL, then go to Pantone if you still don't find it, and if you still haven't found it, then it's better to go or to come to us, because there you still have more than 1,800 extra color possibilities. So clients come to us with Boss paints, with Flamand colors, and we create those in enamel. So the range is quite broad. For that, to present it to the client, if the client can't come over to visit either, what we do is the colors that have been chosen, we can make samples of that. Of course, we're not going to make samples of everything, because then we have to stop the production and work a few months only by making samples, so that's not an option. But what we can do is that, for example, up to 4 colors or even 5 colors and finishings, we can make samples for a project. Yeah. So that's not a problem. That's how it quite often goes. People ask us, okay, we have a project. It's already good. We have an idea of the project, because we give our clients 100% freedom in choosing their colors, their finishes. But it's quite important to know, for example, for the use, when it comes to a finish, let's say, if you want to make a tabletop that is always standing outside in the sun, I would not suggest to do it 100% glossy, for the easy reason. When you sit at the table, 100% glossy, it reflects a lot of light, so it can kill the eyes. So we suggest to make it, for example, 10 to 20% matte. So we still give the freedom. If the client wants that, that's fine by us. But it's always good to also have some feedback from our knowledge that we have in the product and the industry. And based on that, the client can choose what finishes, what colors they want, and what samples they like. It's always good to maybe have a visit first, because it gives you a really good idea. Now you just hear me speaking about the production and what we do, but when you see it, it will, trust me, it will really open your eyes. It's what it does to me still until today, already 5 years every day again. So it's quite surprising what we do and what the possibilities are. And it's good to really understand the process and how it works before choosing the finishes, the colors, and not only that, also the design and the finishes you want on your design. So.
Vincent, I'm blown away by the possibilities. I really didn't know much about it, so it's been really revealing to see. Well, already on one hand, this company that was saved. And this know-how that was preserved and actually augmented with a very innovative vision behind. I think that's just fantastic. In the images here, if I'm not mistaken, they're sort of facade panels, right?
We have a few very big projects coming up. Thanks to my work, it also became a really good friend of mine, Casper Bosmans, for example. He's an artist, quite famous in Benelux, I would say, and even abroad that. Casper came to us the first time with the idea of, okay, I want silkscreen printed artworks for a school, for the parliament in Brussels, etc. So bit by bit, we started working together. And then he got the innovative idea, an innovative project. They wanted facades to be covered with enameled artworks. Why? Art makes something very nice, something very unique in public areas, and enamel is very robust, very resistant, and when it's outside UV, nothing's going to harm it. So that's perfect. The facade you can see here, it's one of the 3 this one is already installed, of course, and there are 2 still in our stock. They're ready, but will be installed soon. This one is installed in New York. It's quite large, even though you don't see it on the picture. Another facade that we made is it's a very unique one. It's Canon red. It's like the Coca-Cola red, also with similar drawing as you can see here. And that one will be installed the first week of July on the first parliament in Den Haag. So that means literally that every time you're going to watch the Dutch TV news and a politician will speak, you will see our artwork behind them. So that's quite nice. And those are 2 of the projects, but we have more. We have a facade that will be installed in Bergen, Norway, in a university there as well. So yeah. These are some of the things, and that's actually, I'm not going to say an entire new market, but it's like a side market that opened up, a mix between the old and the new. The new being architecture in this case, facade cladding, and the old, the silk screen printing and the art. So we brought that together and said, okay, a lot of our knowledge comes from the printing, enamel colors that we create, etc. But we use them, or we diverse them into the architecture and design.
Fantastic. Vincent, we already went past the time. It's a very interesting work. I think we're going to be hearing a lot about you in the future, because I feel that you're just scratching the possibilities, and with architects, designers, artists, also realizing the potential. I guess there will be many more things to come, and innovations to be done. I want to thank you for having joined us for this interview and sharing these beautiful images. I'm hoping to come with my team to visit you soon.
My pleasure. Everybody's welcome. Just give us a call or send an email, and we can organize a visit. No problem.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I will close off the interview, and I hope to see you soon.
Hope to see you soon as well. And thank you, everybody, for listening. And for your interest.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. You're welcome.
That was quite some amazing work. It's always new to learn about novelties and about new products. The funny thing here is that it's not so new, not at all. But it's great to see how the development, how the innovation was brought to this beautiful product. We have next week next week we have Roger Hahn, a designer from Holland, that will be interviewing. I think I'll be doing the interview. I'm not 100% sure. We will be looking into detail to the work of the designer and the throughout the different domains this designer is working. So I hope you will join us then too, and I wish you a fine evening. Bye-bye.